Mira always admired those who spoke with ease. Their voices carried across a room like flowing music, while hers trembled, breaking into pieces before the sentence could end. She often stayed quiet, fearing her English was not good enough, that her words would stumble and draw unwanted laughter. Yet deep inside she longed to share her thoughts, to speak with the same confidence she saw in others. Her journey began not with sudden perfection, but with small steps. She started speaking aloud in her room, reading lines from Little Women and The Secret Garden. At first, her voice felt awkward, but with each attempt it grew steadier. She discovered that confidence was not something people were born with. It was something built like a bridge, stone by stone, through practice. Listening became her second teacher. On the bus, in the market, or in a cafe, Mira paid attention to how others used words, how they paused, how their voices rose and fell. She realized communication was more than grammar. It was rhythm, tone, and courage. The more she listened, the more she understood. When she finally dared to join a conversation with classmates, mistakes poured out of her mouth. She confused tenses, skipped words, and used the wrong expressions. But instead of running from them, she began to see mistakes as signposts, pointing her toward growth. Each correction was a lesson, each error a step forward. Some days she felt progress was invisible, and doubt whispered that she was moving too slowly. Yet she reminded herself that every tree takes time to grow roots. Patience became her strength. Even 5 minutes of practice each day built her confidence like drops filling a jar. With time, she noticed a change. Her hesitation softened. Her voice carried more clearly. She no longer chased perfect grammar. Instead, she focused on sharing ideas with honesty and courage. And the more she spoke, the more her confidence bloomed. Mira learned that confident communication is not about never making mistakes. It is about daring to speak, to listen, to read, and to learn, even when the path feels uncertain. She discovered that confidence does not arrive all at once, but unfolds quietly with every small effort, until one day your voice carries your truth with strength and grace. Confidence grows through practice, not perfection. Many people wait for the moment when their words will come out flawlessly before daring to speak, but that moment never arrives. Confidence is not a gift handed to the lucky. It is a muscle that strengthens only when used. Just like a musician who learns by playing wrong notes again and again until the melody flows, a learner gains courage by practicing even when the sentences are broken. Lena once dreamed of speaking English confidently in front of her class. For weeks, she stayed silent, fearing her accent and grammar would expose her. One day, she decided to try anyway. Her voice shook, and she stumbled over words, but she finished her thought. The applause that followed was not for perfection, but for bravery. That single attempt became the seed of her growing confidence. Every time you practice, no matter how clumsy it feels, you are training your voice and mind to work together. The more often you practice, the less power fear holds over you. Confidence never comes from waiting. It comes from speaking, trying, and showing up even when mistakes appear. With each effort, your voice grows steadier, and the courage you once thought distant begins to live inside you. Listening carefully improves understanding and expression. Many learners rush to speak quickly, thinking that fluency is measured by speed, but true communication begins with listening. When you listen closely, you don't just hear words. You notice rhythm, tone, and even the silence between sentences. These small details shape the way you respond and the way your own voice begins to grow. Ravi discovered this when he spent hours each evening listening to English podcasts. At first, he could only catch a few words here and there, but slowly his ears trained themselves. He began to notice how native speakers linked words, how they emphasized certain sounds, and how emotions lived in their voices. Without realizing it, his listening shaped his speaking. His sentences became smoother, his pronunciation sharper, and his replies more natural. Listening is like filling a jar, drop by drop. Every word you hear adds to your understanding, and every conversation you absorb makes your own speech stronger. It teaches you patience, and it shows you that silence is not weakness. It is preparation. The better you listen, the more confidently you can express yourself, because your words no longer stand alone. They grow from the richness of what you have heard. Reading widely expands vocabulary and thought. Every book, article, or story you read is like opening a new window, letting in light you never noticed before. The more you read, the more words you gather, not as cold entries from a dictionary, but as living expressions tied to feelings, images, and ideas. Reading is not just about language. It shapes the way you think, the way you see the world, and the way you explain yourself to others. Amira learned this when she picked up The Old Man and the Sea. At first, she struggled with unfamiliar words, pausing often to guess their meanings. But as the story unfolded, the words made sense in their context. She didn't just memorize them, she felt them. The word endurance was no longer a vocabulary list item. It became the image of the fisherman fighting against the sea. Later, when she used the word in conversation, it carried weight, not just letters. Reading is a quiet teacher. It expands your mind without you noticing. It gives you examples of how sentences flow, how ideas are expressed, and how emotions are conveyed. Each page you turn becomes part of your voice. The more you read, the more natural your communication feels, because you are not just collecting words. You are weaving thoughts shaped by the wisdom of many writers before you. Speaking boldly reduces fear and builds fluency. Fear often whispers that your words will sound wrong, that people will laugh, or that silence is safer. But the moment you choose to speak, even with trembling voice and uncertain grammar, you weaken that fear. Each attempt you make is like stepping onto a stage. The first time feels heavy, but every step after grows lighter. Karim experienced this when he moved to a new city. Surrounded by strangers, he hesitated to order food in English, pointing at the menu instead of speaking. One day, he forced himself to say the words aloud. His pronunciation was imperfect, and the cashier asked him to repeat. But when he finally managed, he felt a spark of courage. From then on, he spoke a little more each day. What once felt terrifying became normal and eventually enjoyable. Bold speaking is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about daring to use the words you already know. The more you speak, the less fear controls you, and the smoother your sentences become. Fluency is not built in silence. It is built in the sound of your own voice, taking risks, stumbling, and rising again. The courage to speak boldly today plants the confidence you will carry tomorrow. Mistakes are guides that shape stronger communication. Many learners see mistakes as enemies, but in truth, they are silent teachers. Each slip in grammar, each wrong word, each pause where you struggle to continue is not proof of failure. It is a signal pointing to what needs growth. Without mistakes, progress would be invisible, like trying to walk without first stumbling. Hannah once mixed up the words borrow and lend while speaking with a friend. She said, "Can you borrow me your book?" Her friend smiled gently and replied, "You mean lend." At first, Hannah felt embarrassed, wishing she had stayed quiet. But the very next day, she remembered the correction so clearly that she never confused those two words again. That mistake became a permanent lesson, carved deeper into her memory than any textbook exercise could. When you accept mistakes as guides, your learning transforms. Instead of hiding from errors, you welcome them, knowing they are proof you are moving forward. Every correction sharpens your understanding. Every stumble adds strength to your communication. Mistakes do not block your path. They light it, showing you where to step next. Patience keeps progress steady and lasting. Many people want quick results. They hope to speak perfectly in a few weeks, and when that doesn't happen, they feel disappointed. But language is like a tree. It doesn't grow tall in a single season. It grows quietly, day by day, its roots deepening before its branches spread. The same is true with communication. Lasting confidence comes only with patience. Daniel once started practicing English with great excitement. He studied for hours every day, but when he couldn't speak fluently after a month, Frustration pushed him to stop. Months later, he tried again, but this time with patience. He set small goals, like learning 3 new words a day or having a short conversation each week. Slowly, without the pressure of speed, he began to see real progress. His sentences grew longer, his thoughts clearer, and his confidence stronger. Patience teaches you that progress is not about how fast you move, but about how consistently you keep going. Even 5 minutes of effort each day builds a foundation. Without patience, frustration cuts the journey short. With patience, every step lasts. Just as rivers carve valleys over time, your steady efforts carve confidence into your voice. Would you like me to now expand the 7th keynote in the same flowing story-like style? Daily effort creates visible change over time. Great progress in communication doesn't come from rare bursts of energy, but from the steady rhythm of small, repeated actions. Even the shortest daily practice, speaking for a few minutes, reading a page, or listening to a short dialogue, builds a chain that strengthens with each link. When effort becomes a habit, progress becomes inevitable. Sophia once believed that studying English for long hours on weekends would be enough. But each week, she forgot much of what she had learned, and frustration grew. Then she decided to practice just 15 minutes every day, reading a story, repeating sentences, or writing a short journal. At first, it felt too small to matter, but after a few months, she noticed her speech was smoother, her listening sharper, and her confidence far stronger. Those tiny drops of effort had filled her jar. Daily effort is like the rising sun. You don't always notice its movement, but over time, it changes the entire sky. The secret to confident communication is not sudden brilliance. It is the quiet, persistent effort that shapes your voice, your thoughts, and your courage day after day. Would you like me to continue with the 8th keynote in this same storytelling style? Courage turns hesitation into clarity. Fear often builds a wall in the mind, making you pause before speaking, wondering if your words are right. That hesitation steals the strength from your voice, but courage, even in its smallest form, breaks through that wall. When you decide to speak despite the fear, your words begin to flow, and clarity follows. Omar knew this well. In group discussions, he always rehearsed his sentences silently, waiting for the perfect moment to speak. By the time he was ready, the conversation had already moved on. One day, he chose a different path. He spoke the thought as it came, without overthinking. His sentence was simple, not perfect, but everyone understood him. The relief he felt was greater than the fear he had carried for so long. From then on, every act of courage reduced his hesitation and made his voice clearer. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means speaking even while fear is present. Each time you choose courage, your hesitation shrinks and your confidence grows. The words may not be flawless, but they become stronger, clearer, and more natural because they come from a place of honesty and boldness. True confidence comes from expressing ideas, not flawless grammar. Many learners believe they must wait until every sentence is perfect before they can speak, but perfection is a heavy chain that keeps the voice silent. Real communication is not about displaying polished grammar. It is about sharing thoughts, feelings, and stories in a way that connects with others. Nadia realized this when she joined an international workshop. She worried that her English was not perfect, that others would notice her mistakes. But when she shared her opinion on a topic, people listened with interest, nodding and asking questions. They cared about her ideas, not her grammar. That moment taught her that true confidence blooms when you stop chasing flawlessness and start focusing on meaning. Grammar matters, but it is only one part of the picture. Listeners want clarity, sincerity, and connection more than perfect rules. When you speak with intention, people hear your heart behind the words. Confidence grows not from avoiding mistakes, but from daring to express your thoughts with courage. Your message is what leaves an impact, not whether every word follows the rule.